Hi there, and welcome to the 27th OctoPrint On Air broadcast. My name is Gina Heuske. No, there is no B in this name. And I welcome you to this live broadcast if you're watching it live, or the recording of it if you're watching this later on this very rainy and ugly, weathery Friday evening. As usual, first a short outline of what we're going to do. So I'm going to tell you what I've been up to. I'll give you a short overview of what the next steps will be. Then we'll take a look at the stats from the anonymous usage tracking, because since we had a release, that those are a bit more interesting than usual even. And then we'll have our Q&A segment. I have 4 questions prepared, I think, which were in the backlog. But there will also be, as usual, a live chat. For those of you who are watching this on desktop, it will be over there. And for those of you who are watching this on mobile, it will be down there. And keep an eye on that. And if there are any questions that come up in there, I will also tackle them in the Q&A segment as well. Yep. So what I've been up to. Sadly, way less than I originally wanted. The problem is that pretty much since the last broadcast, I've been more or less constantly sick with one cold after the next. So that was a lot of fun and still is. But at least, as you hear, I can speak again and my voice is back. And at least right now, I actually can breathe through my nose. So that's definitely an improvement over the last couple of days. Still, I did release 312 RC3 on September 23rd, and then almost a month later, thanks to the aforementioned cold and also a conference in the middle, 312 stable. And so far, I have to say the feedback has been very good. I do not see any major issues. There was one problem with the MMU add-on for Prusa printers, where if you did not have the printer profile configured correctly to state the correct number of extruders, which for an MMU2 is five, then for some reason it caused weird printer resets or firmware loops or something like that, because then starting with 1312, OctoPrint will no longer send 2 commands to a printer where it does not know that it has this tool. This is to avoid issues with printers who would then run into an endless loop or just crash or something. If they only have one extruder, for example, and then get into T2, and this feature has been in there for a while, it just was buggy. So I fixed this bug in 1312, and due to fixing this bug, it unearthed a couple of misconfigured printer profiles around the globe, apparently, for MMU2 users. So if you have not yet updated to 1312 and have an MMU and MMU2, then please make sure that your printer profile, which you use in OctoPrint, actually correctly specifies the number of extruders, and then you should not run into any kind of issues. I sadly cannot tell you how this particular configuration problem can lead to printer resets, because I could not figure this out. But it seems to be a combination of not getting a tool command within a certain amount of time, and then sometimes that causes the printer to reset, and sometimes it just causes the MMU to reset or do a soft reset, or it was a really weird situation. Anyhow, there is a solution for it. Just make sure your extruders are correctly specified in a printer profile and all should be fine. Another thing that happened in the last couple of weeks since the last installment of these is there has been a new OctoPi release candidate, which is not my work, but which was actually pushed out by Guy Scheffer, so big thanks to him for that, which brings Raspberry Pi 4 compatibility first and foremost, and also a couple of small bug fixes, and of course the most recent version of OctoPrint and all that. So if you've been waiting for an official new version of OctoPi and want to test it a bit before it gets released, you still have a chance. I think he wants to release it quite soon, but still, yeah. So that was released or that RC has been out since October 30th. So yeah, for a bit over a week now. Maybe take a look. Yeah, and also what I've been doing is working on some more final touches on 1.4.0. Expect a release candidate of that out soon. And that actually brings me to the next steps. So the thing is, as you know from my past broadcasts and past OctoPrint On Airs, and also from my presence on the forums and whatnot, the original goal was to release 1.4.0 stable in 2019, because that will be the release that will be Python 3 compatible, and Python 2 will go end of life on January the 1st, 2020. So yeah, that was the goal. And then I got sick. So I've had to change the goal slightly. So the new goal is to get an RC out ASAP. Make sure that you all can test that and see if there are any issues that crept in during the Python 3 conversion, or with the new granular permission system, which will be in there, or any of the other things that are in there. What it will not include, and I hinted at that already last time, I think, is it will not include a new COM layer that I've been working on, simply because if I now try to put that in as well, there would be no chance to even get an RC out anymore this year, I fear, because I do not want to release anything after December 10th-ish, due to Christmas simply looming, and I don't want people to run into any kind of problem and then me not being there anymore to help them. So I always try to keep at least a 2-week window until the holidays with any final releases of the year or release candidates of the year for Octoprint, simply so that I have 2 weeks left in order for fixing any kind of stuff. Yeah, so RC 1.4.0 out as ASAP, and then I guess we will maybe also see a second one in 2019, but we will not see a stable one. I would be severely surprised if we saw a stable one. So the goal is to get that out ASAP come January, but I think we all agree that it makes more sense to give this the testing time it needs by a bit of a bigger population than what has so far been looking at this code base, instead of trying to rush things now and potentially break setups for people just before Christmas. So I think that's not worth it, especially not as Python 2 will not stop working on January 1st, 2020. It simply will not get any updates after this. And yeah, based on what I see in anonymous usage tracking, most people don't update their Python installations anyhow. So yeah, I think it is justifiable to say we are not going to rush it out now for any price, and just try to make it a good release instead. A release that is going to be pushed as soon as possible again, but still, yeah, it doesn't make sense to try to rush this. And I lost pretty much a month of work, so yeah. Okay, that being said, once this RC goes out, I will need a ton of testers, and if you're currently tracking the maintenance RC branch in Octoprint, you will not see this RC because it's a devil RC. So I have this distinction between maintenance RCs and devil RCs, because devil RCs, at least in the beginning, can be a bit less stable because they usually contain bigger features, bigger changes and all that. So I wanted to give people the opportunity to say, maybe that's a bit too tough for me and I just stick to the maintenance stuff. But I will need testers for the devil RC. So if you feel comfortable with switching to the devil RC branch, that would be a release channel, sorry. That would be greatly appreciated. Because so far we had something like, I think roughly maybe 900 or so people usually testing things on the RCs. I fear we will not hit that number at first, at least for 1.4.0 RC1. It would be nice though if we got a couple of hundred, because that way there is a bit of guarantee that there will be a multitude of printer setups, a multitude of firmware versions that Octoprint runs against, underlying. Hey, I hope I'm still here because my alright, my PC just decided to shut off everything for a short period, but that was just a screensaver, thankfully. Multitude of basically like this whole, no, I'm not going to say the word that just came to my head, this huge very fragmented environment that OctoPrint usually also encounters in the wild when with stable versions needs a couple hundred of RC testers in order to be more or less replicated during the RC testing phase. So if you think you can stomach it, and if you feel comfortable if push comes to shove to roll stuff back via the command line, which by the way you always also should with maintenance RCs, but more so with Devil RCs, then please switch to that. You also get maintenance RCs on the Devil RC channel, in just not the other way around. Okay, so that was that, and this is basically, this is going to be the next steps. One other thing that is going to be, well, more or less a next step, should you be in Leipzig at the 36C3, so the Chaos Communication Congress, after Christmas and before New Year's, I'll be there as well, and please say hi if you see me running around. So a bit like the Chaos Communication Camp that I went to in August, just this time indoors and with more cold outside and very much more people inside. Like 15,000, I think. So this is going to be, fun. Okay, so this brings us to a quick look at the stats. I'll just have to quickly switch over to the other screen. There you go. So this is the past 30 days, and so this is pretty much more or less static, the all instances overall over time. As you see, the number here is increasing because I think when I started giving you insight into these stats, it was at like 50,000, and now we are already at 58,000. So hey, it's still growing. And the really fun stuff is down here this time, because this is when I released 1312 stable on October 22nd. And you can see this is a logarithmic scale, by the way, so don't get confused by that. You can see that people started updating, and of course also the people running 1311 stable at that point upgraded, as well as did the 1312 RC3, now I have it, group. And then around November the 2nd-ish, 1312 took over. And it's still growing. So I hope at some point this line will go way down. But as you can see with the 1310 releases, a lot of people simply do not want to upgrade for some reason or another. Which, I mean, okay, it's fine. But as long as they don't open tickets about bugs which have been fixed in the current versions, I'm fine with that, more or less. Okay, and you can also see that with the prints that have been running. So the green line is prints run under 1311, and the yellow is prints run under 1312. Great. And actually not prints, but printed hours. And this little peak here for 1310 is actually, the expression of a bug, because 1310 was not yet doing... How do you say, doing, so the calculation of the duration here does not take into account time shifts, into account. So if you have like an NTP update that comes in the middle, then things like this spike here can happen, which basically translates to 8,000 hours printed within an hour or something, which, no, this is not going to happen. And, or rather being done after that time. So I think, something like that. So these peaks are the expression of a duration calculation error, which I only found thanks to seeing peaks like this in the graph, which I found quite helpful. Another very, very fun thing that I can now see, and which is especially interesting to plugin authors, With 1.3.12, I added finally a daily request that sends the whole list of plugins currently installed with the version. So far I only could track new plugin installs because I only could track the install events themselves. And with 1.3.12, there's also now this Pong event, which I called it, which I think is set to every 12 hours or something. And sorry, this is my throat giving me a bit of trouble right now. So now I get a list of all plugins that are currently installed every 12 hours or something like that, or maybe it was 24, I'm not entirely sure. Still, that allows me to create top 20 plugin lists. And currently the absolute top dog is Octolabs with 6,000, almost 6,000. Holy cow. It's a bit tricky to talk apparently today. Installations, and 5k of those are just version 1.3.4, and you can see though there are a couple of others which are quite popular. And yes, I still am looking into making this data available. I hope maybe in 2020 I will finally manage. Hopefully earlier than later, because I think it would be very, very helpful for people to get access to this data for plugin authors specifically more often than during every OctoPrint On Air. Yeah. In any case, if you're a plugin author and if you're interested in how many installations are there or something, then I hope I'm not going to regret this, but feel free to post in the OctoPrint community forum and just ask me there, and then I'll just try to create an excerpt of this data and dump it there, so like a visualization, and then hopefully that will help. If it gets too much, I will have to say sorry. No, we'll stick to the bi-monthly, the per monthly thingies again. But yeah, just so you know, I'm open to help here if I can. Okay, so that was basically all that for now I wanted to show you in the stats. And Jesus, sorry. That brings me back to... Actually, that brings me to the Q&A section. Let's do it like this. As I said, there were 4 questions in the backlog, and we're just going to go through them now. And if there are any questions that come up or something in the while I'm doing this, you can ask them in the live chat, of course, and I'll get to you then as soon as I see them, or rather when it fits. So not when I'm right in the middle of my sentence, but you know. Okay, so first question by Dan was, I have a leapfrog seed, I hope this is how it's pronounced. Is there a way to extract the level bed macro from the version of OctoPrint, or can you add it to available macros? I want to upgrade the OctoPrint computer. So I have to admit I have absolutely no idea about the leapfrog setup specifically there. I know they bundle, but I do not know where they put their bed leveling macro. So there are 2 possibilities that I see here. One is that, as far as I remember, they went with a custom UI plugin to completely customize the front end, and it might be that they've put it in there. Or alternatively, maybe they've just defined that stuff as a custom control, which is a core OctoPrint feature. In which case, yeah, you should be able to just check the config YAML. I'm assuming that you have access to the file system here, which I hope you do, because otherwise I have no idea how to help you. But yeah, so just to check the config YAML for the custom control definitions, and if there is nothing in there, then I would probably try to get my hands on the source of the custom UI and see if something in there helps you. I do not want to put more or less printer-specific bed leveling macros, or any macros for that matter, into OctoPrint Core, because yeah, it just feels wrong. if it's printer specific, it belongs in a plugin maybe, but not in core. And also you can always customize the stuff yourself via the custom controls. So yeah. Hope this helps. I sadly no longer have contacts within Leapfrog, so I cannot investigate for you. I used to have some, but I no longer do. So yeah. Next question by John. Will 1.3x ever run on Python 3, or should we wait until 1.4x to try and rebuild the replicate-based image to use Python 3 instead of 2? So no Python, no OctoPrint 1.3 will never run on Python 3, or at least not my versions. All the Python 3 conversion or compatibility stuff has been done on the Devil branch, so on what will be 1.4.0 and something on my glasses. And so therefore I suggest you wait until 1.4, or maybe just take a look at what is there now and try to port things over now, because then you will have them ready when it gets released. Also about porting plugins and such, I put a post into the OctoPrint community forums on this matter where I explain what to do and all that, and I still need to distill this into a blog post as well, also with a bit of an outline for people interested in this whole Python 3 stuff. I simply have not yet found the time. But you might want to take a look at that, because it will hopefully help you a bit to look to know what the usual pitfalls are, and also what you have to do with plugins in order for them to be even able to load under OctoPrint 1.4x running under Python 3, because there is a slight change that you'll need to make, apart from testing if it even will work. Yeah, so I hope this answers the question. Sorry, this is at least this time I was clever enough to prepare a mug of tea. Next question, also by John. What would you say is the more critical element to getting started as a community developer? I'd like to do the same type of jump you did, but going into firmware development for Redeem instead, and already there is one company indicating interest in putting dollars on the table for that, just not enough by itself. So this is really tricky to answer, maybe even impossible so, because I don't think there is a general answer to that. So the thing is, I think I can only tell you what I think is why it so far works for me. I hope this suffices, because I don't think that it's like generally transferable on every kind of open source development and trying to become a crowd-funded community developer. I think why it worked for me was because at the point that I did this jump, which was in April, May, June, April. The Patreon went live in April. In April 2016, is back then I already had an established user base that I basically could call to action, and I did this. So I planned this. I knew that I had lost my job, which so far was funding all this stuff, like 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the Patreon went live, and these 2 or 3, 2.5, I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, basically I learned about it at the end of March, and then until the April the 13th, I worked on making the press release ready, so to speak, because what I wanted to do back then, and I think that is also important, is to make clear, so here's a problem with regards to the future of this project, but here's a solution. So problem, no more funding. Solution, here's Patreon, please help me. Of course, that is very specific to my situation, because I was already working full-time on it, but funded by a single sponsor. And so that was like, there would have been a huge shift in development mode if that had not worked out, or basically it would have meant that I would have to stop doing it, because I was not and by the way, I'm still not ready to do this kind of work as a pet project again, because simply of the scale. You know, this is a full-time job and then some, and this is not something that I can do in my spare time or during my vacation or something like this, at least not without it severely impacting my relationships and my health. And I went through this for almost 2 years. Was it 2 years? Well, 1.5 maybe. For 1.5 years I did this mode, and I do not recommend it to anyone to do that long term. So yeah, this is something that I will not do. And being able to communicate this freely and having basically like critical enough mass, I guess you could say, to make this jump was crucial in order to do it. Without that, I think, so without this critical mass, this would not have happened. I cannot tell you how big this critical mass was, because back then I did not have any tracking yet, so I did not have any numbers of how many users were actually, or how many people were actually using OctoPrint, or rather how many instances were out there versus how many people then helped me. But yeah, at least it made a bit of a splash back then in the newsphere. So apparently it rattled some people, and that was, I think, very important to get the initial kickoff, so to speak. Then what I think also helped me was that I already had a proven track record of being to run this project first and foremost, and also run it well enough and stable enough that it was something that people liked using, I guess. And so I first on the side and then also full time. So when I made this jump, I was at, as I said, at 1.5 year of doing this as a pet project, and almost 2 years, or even more than 2 years, no, almost 2 years of doing it full time and funded by a company, by a single company. And so that was basically proof, I think, for some people maybe, that hey, she doesn't just want to see if she can make that work, but she already did make that work, and now only the money is the problem. So we can just throw money in the direction, and then maybe the funding situation will clear itself and things will just continue to be like they are now. And I think that is basically what I did. So maybe that succeeded. And one thing very, very important, I think, is if you make this jump, or if you want to make this jump, you have to be utterly prepared for it to fail. So at any given time, at the drop of a hat, basically. Because what I do not have at all is control here. I mean, I get most of my support through Patreon, and also through PayPal, and a bit through Donorbox, and now also GitHub sponsors is taking up a bit, but it's still very little what comes in through there. Actually, I still haven't gotten my first payout because I'm still below $100 after, I think, 2 or 3 months. So all of this stuff are external services that are not under my control. So when something happens, like it did, for example, 2 years ago, almost, like 1 year and 11 months ago, almost to the day, when Patreon decided to remodel their fee structure, which they then immediately rolled back on about 3 days later. But yeah, when they did that, I was hemorrhaging patrons left and right. And if they had stuck to this, it could have meant that all this model would just stop working. Not because I did anything wrong, or because something even remotely inside my control changed, but simply, because some external factor made everything stop working. And you just have to be aware of that. So if you go this route, you do not have any kind of control over this. You have to be prepared for it to stop at any given moment, and people stopping to support you because of their financial situation, or people stopping to support you because some other fancy project came around, or stuff like this. So and in order to figure out if there is not a big bang kind of failure, but more of a lengthy failure is really, really, really important, at least from my experience so far, to stay on top of your financial situation and monitor it very closely. So what I do every month is I do full-blown bookkeeping of what comes in from where. I also have to do this for my tax stuff anyhow, but I track this and I create trends and I analyze the shit out of that stuff in order to have an idea. Are things still going up, or at least stable, or is it more like this? Because when it starts being like this, then you have to see if you can somehow turn it back into this, or at least this. But if you don't succeed with doing that, you also have to have like a cut-off period date thingy for yourself in mind when you stop trying to save a drowning ship. Drowning ships don't drown, right? No, they go under. Anyhow. And yeah, just be prepared to do that. In my case, if that were to happen, I would simply stop doing OctoPrint because, as I said, I cannot do this as a pet project anymore and would just look for regular employment again, or maybe stay self-employed and do some fun Python stuff elsewhere, remote or something. I don't know. So far, I have not had yet to look a bit more closely into this plan B, but it exists and I have it in mind, and yeah, so you should just be prepared to have to face the situation. And of course it would suck, but yeah. Thank you, John. A sinking ship. Yeah. English is not my native language. Also, it's late and Friday, and I my throat, and I just continue piling up the excuses here. Yeah, and where was I? Right, and having facing the potential of failure here and keeping it in mind that it can happen and is completely outside of your control, possibly. I mean, there are also things that you can do wrong that lead to failure here, but still, is something that I would say is not only important for, or maybe is even less important for the success of the switch or of the jump, but rather it's very important for your own mental health and financial security. So yeah, that's what I would just suggest here. And other than that, I fear I do not really have any kind of advice, because as I said, it's very specific to my own situation, I think. And yours might be completely different. Your tax situation might be different. Maybe you have a clear tax situation, because I don't. Yeah, so that was that. And now next question by Ranjib. As an open source software author, what is your biggest concern from a sustainability standpoint? So I actually have two, and I just want to go on the record with that. This was also a really tough question that I had to think a bit about. So as my lengthy answer to the previous question might indicate, is one thing that I think is a really big concern for sustainability in open source software development is like the whole funding problem. Most open source software devs are severely underfunded. Most open source software is severely underfunded. The devs are severely underfunded. Usually it's like 2 or 3 people developing everything in their free time. In my case, it's one person developing it in her full time, which is actually not that much better, I fear. I mean, the funding is there, but the time is still not, regardless. And yeah, this simply does not scale past a certain point, because people want to have a life, they want to have families, they want to have friends, they want to have hobbies and all that. And if all your free time goes into developing an open source project because you cannot afford doing it in your full time, because you have to have a regular paying job in order to be able to afford doing the open source development work, then yeah, things are simply not scaling. And what I see is that especially with regards to established libraries on the market, so I don't know, stuff like I can't think of an example, but like things that you use in order to build other software, but also with regards to existing applications, is there are a lot of companies utilizing these to make profit, and those companies just need to realize that they need to give back. So I mean, all this stuff is not being developed in a vacuum. It's people doing that, and a lot of volunteers doing that, and getting to a breaking point sometimes. And I think if companies did a bit more of the lifting that they should be doing, considering that they are profiteering of these things, or profiteering, whatever, they should give back. And they either should do it back through patches, like also fixing bugs and stuff, not just fixing them on site and then not giving them back, but like being part of the community of the tool or of the library that they are using. And of course also giving back monetarily, because as I said, the goal should be to allow people who are crucial to a project to actually work on this project in a funded kind of way, and not forcing them to do it as a hobby, because at one point they might just decide it's not worth it anymore for them, or they just want another hobby for which they don't have time if they already develop stuff. So that is something that I think should be in the best interest of every single company out there utilizing open source software one way or the another to make a dime on, and for some reason it rarely happens. There has been a bit of an uptick recently thanks to solutions like, so there's something out there called TideLift, where you can register, I think, as an open source project, and then companies can register and say which open source projects they use, and then give money to them through that avenue. And that is a nice idea. The problem is that it's mostly targeting libraries. So again, stuff that other people use in order to build more stuff on, and OctoPrint is not something that fits there. So end user applications, which are usually used as is, which maybe get enhanced by plugins, but like you have this basic platform that you do not build something on OctoPrint per se. You do not put in OctoPrint as a dependency, but instead run it somewhere. So that is the difference here. And the problem with end-user application is, first of all, there is a bit of a vacuum there with regards to solutions for how to fund these, because you cannot just analyze dependency graphs or something like that and then see, okay, Lodash gets such and such amount, such and such an amount, and requests gets this other amount, because it simply has to rely on the users to actually say, oh yeah, I like this and I want to see this improve and get bug fixes and all that stuff, so maybe I should help fund it. And there is a bit of a vacuum there, as I said. And Patreon and PayPal and such can work, but they are not really, they are not specifically built for this kind of stuff. And especially Patreon has this huge focus on artists and so musicians, writers, comic authors, stuff like that. And every time that I get an update from them, I feel a bit like I'm the black sheep in the family, so to speak, because hey, I'm the creative mind that makes software. I just feel like I don't really fit in, and so this is something that you have to keep in mind there. So long story short, funding is, I think, a big issue for open source sustainability. And the other that I see personally is entitlement. There's a lot of open source users out there, and that applies both to end users and also to developers using libraries, who for some reason forget that the software or the library or whatever they are using is made by people and not some faceless company. So I think what I can say here is that all software, all open source maintainers, myself included, we do our best that is possible, that we can do. We want to keep our stuff bug free. We want to keep it stable. We want to make it work for everyone. And if we don't want to make it work for something, we are at least open to find a solution that makes everyone happy. And all of this depends, however, on the collaboration of the people who are using our stuff. And if those people view us as the enemy who needs to somehow be screamed at or ridiculed or just withholden, gets information withheld, like log files and version numbers and such, this is simply not going to work. What I notice a lot is there are basically two groups or three groups. Make it three groups of... No, there are two groups. There are two groups of users of OctoPrint. One group is people who are enthusiastic to help me help them. So they have a problem. Maybe it's a bug. Maybe it's just a case of user error or something that is unclear on the UI and they do not know what to do. Or maybe their printer is weird. Things like this can happen. And then some users are like, okay, I have this problem. What do you need from me in order to help you help me? And then I tell them, and then they give that to me, and then we have this very positive collaboration on something like this, and in the end everyone thanks everyone else and everyone is happy and the problem is solved, or at least it is analyzed enough that next steps can be done, for example by flashing a proper firmware on the printer and not something that someone wrote who doesn't know how firmware is supposed to work. And then there's the other group, which is smaller but sadly very, very loud. And that is the group that goes on to open tickets that basically go either, I have a problem. Yes, elaborate please. And then you have to try to pull every single bit of information out of their nose with pliers. And it is really, really, really tiring and frustrating. Sometimes it gets even worse than that, and they start to say things like, no one tested this shit and stuff like that. And this is like the really negative stuff, where the kind of toxic behavior that can really burn out a maintainer and makes running an open source project sometimes entirely impossible to stomach. So I do not know if I ever showed you this, but let's try something. I hope this does not get too shaky, but for this specific group, I have something in my office. My punching bag. And that has helped my mental health tremendously. But personally, I think it would be better if not every open source maintainer needed a punching bag in their office, but instead people would maybe, remember the human on the other end, and make it more sustainable mentally for an open source maintainer to do their job by not treating them like their personal slave or withholding information they need in order to help them and such. And from what I've seen is that usually an open source maintainer starts very enthusiastically, like, hey, I have made this tool here, or this library, or this plugin, or this application, or whatever, and I want to share it with everyone. And I think it's great, and maybe it helps someone. And then people start like, could you make it do that? And could you make it do that? And they are like, yes, I'm doing all of this. And then the more it grows, the more likely it is that they encounter one of these people that I mentioned that are really, really nasty. And that then can be really a bit of a bummer. And some people then simply stop. Some people soldier on through. And then it gets worse. Then they start finding themselves for weeks and weeks and weeks running after log files and all that. And then one of two things can happen. Either the people at one point say, I'm done, I'm not doing this anymore. I merely started this in order to solve a problem that I was having, and if I thought maybe someone was going to I was going to help someone else by publishing this as well, but I simply cannot, I do not want, or I cannot run after things. Or the other option is the maintainer becomes a bit of a grumpy mess. So these are the two extremes. There are of course a lot of variations in between. which is usually the point where maintainers are like no logs, boof, closed, and like really grumpy. And I have to admit, I've also done this in the past because it just gets too much. And I try to rein it in, but sometimes it still comes through. So less though, ever since I got the punching bag. And it would be, I think it would be such a nicer world if we did not have this particular problem that much. Or also, if you see something, say something. If you see sorry for the word, but if you see some asshole abusing a maintainer, then just speak up. Because that is also something that I've noticed helped me a lot dealing with these people. When I saw someone being really, really aggressive towards me and calling me names and all that, and it helped so much when someone else just said, what you're doing here, not okay. Don't get nasty about it. Stay professional, stay clean, but just speak up and say your behavior here is absolutely out of anything that is tolerable. Yeah. It's actually something that everyone could do, I think. Yeah. And that just got a bit philosophical. Also, I hope you don't hear that. And if you do, I'm sorry for that. There is a church, like, I don't know, maybe 150 meters or something like that, as the bird flies. And yeah, it just decided to start ringing the bells because I don't know for what reason or ever. Well, okay. I hope that answered the question. I mean, it's just my perspective. But yeah, I hope I gave it. And now let's take a look at the live chat if there's something. John asked whether I print out the usernames and tape them on the punching bag. So far I haven't. What I usually do is if something really infuriates me and I read that, I just immediately jump up. Usually I have music running here anyhow now. But right now I obviously don't because recording and all that, but usually I have something with a lot of beats going on anyhow, and then I just put on my grappling gloves and pound this thing for a bit, and then once I'm winded, I'm usually also calmed down again. I really cannot stress enough how big of a difference this thing has made for my, how do I say, my inner balance, basically. Because before it was, when someone was being an ass, it sometimes it churned and churned and churned in my head for a day or maybe longer, depended on the excessiveness of the behavior. And now it's usually done and over after 15 minutes or so, thanks to that thing. So I really can recommend this investment. Another John has a silly question, or that's his phrase. I would just say a question. What is that wheel at the bottom right of the picture? So I figure you're talking about that one. Let me make this. Yeah, so I mentioned that I'm going to Chaos Communication Congress, right? The thing is, that thing is at Leipzig Fair. I was there 2 years ago already, and what I did back then was I walked a whole ton. Because that thing is big and Congress is big, and I was really, really envious of all the people having a scooter back then. So what I did was I bought myself a scooter. Now is the question, why is there a scooter in my room propped up like it was a car that I'm working on? Well, the scooter is not going to stay like it was when I bought it. So let me just maybe... So... What I did is a bit tricky to hold. I hope you can see that. Yeah. What I did is, so these are two RGB WS2A12 LED strips, and this is an ESP32, and this down here is a USB battery pack mounted in a designed and printed thingy, and what it currently does when plugged in is a little fire effect as an underglow, basically. And that's only the start though. I finally got all the parts in this week. What I want to do is make these light effects sound reactive. And I also got a little OLED display that I want to use for switching the effects and all that, because the Wi-Fi of the ESP will be switched off while I'm at the event. Rogue APs are not very welcome there, and I also don't want to put it on the regular Wi-Fi, because then, yeah, I mean, it's a hacker event. I don't want people to hack my scooter. And plus, it's not really necessary anyhow if I have an OLED display, and I want to have this OLED display anyhow, because what I also bought was a couple of reed switches and all that, so that thing is going to get a speedometer. I got some other ideas. I don't want to promise too much now, but this is basically like my current pet project for after hours, when I still have the energy to work on it. Also when I actually have the parts that I need. But as I said, at least now I think everything should be there, at least for the current ideas. Yeah. I hope that answers the question. And do we have anything else? Nope, I don't think so. Oh, something about the 1310 printers that are still out there. John speculated that it might be some print farm or two, maybe Prusa. I think Prusa isn't using OctoPrint. But yeah, maybe it's a print farm. I don't know. I mean, it's, how many was it again? Still around 4,000, 3,000, 3,500, something like that. So yeah, I have no idea. I just hope at one point they will update. Simply because then I will not get these weird spikes in my printed hour graph anymore. But if push comes to shove, I will just find some way to filter those out, I hope. Yep. Okay, so that was that. No more questions, I think. So the next one will be roughly in a month again. I'll try to make it before Christmas, of course, as the last one in 2019. Might be able to give you an update on the scooter then as well. And we'll post the appointment on Patreon as always. I will try to see that I get this recording out next week. But I hope it actually works out. Last time it was a bit delayed due to with that being said, what I'm now going to do is probably make dinner and start playing The Witcher 3, which I ordered, which came today for Switch again. And until next time, then all that's left to say is thanks for being here. I hope it was interesting and you learned something and got your questions answered and all that. And in any case, happy printing. Bye.